Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going deep today.
Oh,
Yeah, into
lay it on me.
sociology and ancient communication.
Okay.
You with me?
I'm intrigued. Go on.
We're diving into this essay by letterless Peter Duke,
Okay.
and it analyzes how Jesus' teachings,
Yeah.
especially this concept of logos,
Mm.
it might actually give us a way to push back against some of the downsides
Yeah.
of what sociologists see Wright Mills.
Oh, right. Yeah. I think we've talked about him before, right?
Mass society.
Yeah. Mass society.
So,
And wasn't that connected to like the power elite stuff too?
You can-
That shift from like an American public to a mass society.
yeah, and that's really the heart of this whole
Yeah.
deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to break down Mills's framework.
Yeah.
Look at the 5 key attributes he outlines for each type of society.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll see how Duke connects those attributes to specific examples
Okay.
of Jesus' teachings in the Gospels,
Gotcha.
focusing on how he used logos, this powerful communication tool,
So kind of like a,
to maybe shift people
yeah.
from that mass society mindset
Mm-hmm.
to a more engaged and empowered state.
Okay. So more like the American public that Mills talked about.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Great.
But before we jump into logos,
Sure.
could you just remind us what those two types of societies are all about?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like what makes a mass society so different from an American public?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
So in a mass society, think of people as kind of like passive spectators.
Okay.
They just take in information without really questioning it.
Uh-huh.
They're easily manipulated by those in power,
Yeah.
and they feel really isolated,
Yeah.
disconnected from each other.
Because you're lost in the crowd.
Exactly.
And your voice doesn't matter.
And the people in power,
Right. And they love that.
they thrive on that.
Yeah.
Mills contrasted that
Huh?
with the idea of an American public.
All right.
And remember, this isn't
just about America.
not just people in America.
Okay.
It's a universal
Idea.
idea where individuals are actively engaged in public discourse.
Okay.
They hold authority accountable.
Yeah.
They have genuine power
More like that ideal society.
to shape their own reality.
Yeah, where people are informed, they think critically,
Right.
they work together
Yeah,
to deal with problems.
exactly.
That's where logos comes in.
That's it. Duke's essay argues that Jesus was like a master of neuro-linguistic reframing,
Oh.
using logos.
Okay.
And again, this is way beyond just words
Yeah.
to disrupt those patterns of thinking and behavior
Right.
that characterize a mass society.
So he's like waking people up
Exactly.
to this more empowered way of being.
Yeah, more like Mills's vision of an American public.
Okay, now that's a big claim.
It is.
But like, what does neuro-linguistic reframing actually mean?
Yeah.
And how does it connect to this whole ancient idea of logos?
Well, neuro-linguistic reframing is basically, it's shifting your perspective,
Uh-huh.
looking at a situation from a different angle,
Okay.
changing the meaning
Yeah.
you give to it.
Mm-hmm.
And Duke's suggesting that Jesus did this constantly,
Okay.
using logos to challenge assumptions,
Right.
break down those false dilemmas,
Interesting.
empower people to see things in a new light.
So it's not just the words themselves.
Right.
It's how he used language
Yeah.
to change people's thinking.
They're mental models
Okay.
of the world.
Gotcha.
And to really understand how powerful this can be,
Yeah.
we need to look at some examples from the Gospels.
Absolutely. Let's see this in action.
Okay, so one example Duke highlights is the story of Jesus
Mm-hmm.
and the Samaritan woman at the well.
Okay.
Now remember the Samaritans
Oh, yeah.
and the Jews,
They didn't get along.
they had this big rivalry,
Yeah.
deeply divided
Anytime.
along religious and cultural lines.
Totally.
So in this story,
Yeah.
the woman is surprised to even be talking to Jesus, let alone engaging in this theological discussion with him.
Like, what's going on here?
She even challenges him,
Okay.
saying, "We worship on this mountain, but you Jews say that the place where people must worship is in Jerusalem."
Oh, so she's calling him out.
Yeah, it's a classic example of a thought-terminating cliche.
Oh, I see.
Something that shuts down conversation,
Right.
reinforces those existing divisions.
Okay.
But Jesus,
Yeah.
instead of getting caught in that trap,
It doesn't take the bait.
reframes the whole conversation.
How does he do that?
He says, it's not about the specific location, it's about worshiping in spirit and truth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he shifts the focus from those external rituals,
Right.
geographical boundaries,
It's not about where you are
to something much deeper,
or internal.
an internal connection
crazy.
with the divine.
He's basically saying access to truth
Yeah.
isn't limited by like location
Right.
or who's in charge.
It's about personal connection, about a shift in perspective.
And that goes against the whole mass society mindset.
Exactly.
Where those in power control everything.
Yeah, they control the knowledge and the power.
Jesus is saying true understanding comes from within.
It does.
You got to engage with those deeper questions.
Yeah.
Just blindly follow the leaders.
Right. And, this idea of decentralizing access to truth is a key attribute of Mills American Public.
Okay.
It's about empowering individuals to think for themselves.
To question
authority and to reach their own conclusions.
Not just blindly following.
Based on reason and evidence.
Makes sense.
Not blind faith or obedience.
So Jesus is using logos to break down these barriers that keep people trapped in a mass society mindset.
Those barriers like reliance on external authority, the acceptance of limiting beliefs, the fear of questioning the status quo.
Wow, this is really interesting.
And that's just one example.
Okay.
There are tons more where Jesus uses logos to challenge assumptions, reframe perspectives.
I'm ready for more.
And empower people to see themselves and the world in a new light.
So how does all of this connect to those other attributes of a mass society and an American public that Mills outlined?
Definitely. To see that pattern.
Yeah. Is there a pattern here?
I got to dig into some more examples.
All right, ready. Let's do it.
From the Gospels, where Jesus uses logos to address those specific conditions that Mills identified.
Let's get into it. So we were talking about how Jesus used logos.
Right.
That powerful communication tool. To challenge that mass society mindset by kind of like decentralizing access to truth.
Right. In that conversation with the Samaritan woman.
Yeah. What other attributes of mass society did Jesus kind of tackle?
Yeah.
Using logos and like how?
Well, another big attribute of mass society that Mills pointed out was the use of manipulative rhetoric. Like, think about how easy people are swayed by propaganda, by those thought-terminating cliches that just shut down critical thinking.
Well, like those false dilemmas we see everywhere these days.
Everywhere.
Where it's like either this or that.
Right.
And they make these complex issues so simple.
Exactly.
It's like you can't even...
It's impossible
that real conversation.
To have a nuanced conversation.
Yeah.
And Duke argues that Jesus was really skilled at recognizing and dismantling those rhetorical traps.
Really?
He refused to play by the rules of those who tried to manipulate and control through language.
Do you have any examples of that?
Definitely.
Okay.
One that comes to mind is the story of the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Trying to trap Jesus with that question about paying taxes to Caesar.
Oh, right. Yeah.
If he says yes.
Yeah, he's a Roman sympathizer.
He's seen as supporting Roman oppression.
Right.
If he says no.
He's starting a rebellion.
He's inciting rebellion.
Yeah. Real lose-lose.
A classic double bind.
How did he get out of that one?
He did it brilliantly.
Okay.
By shifting the whole frame of reference.
Okay.
Instead of getting caught in their either logic.
Yeah.
He asks for a coin. Points to Caesar's image on it.
Right.
And says, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's.
Wow.
He totally sidestepped their trap.
He did.
And turned it into a teaching moment.
Yeah.
About discerning true priorities and responsibilities.
About what really matters.
Exactly. He refused to be manipulated by their rhetoric.
Yeah.
And in doing so, he modeled the way of engaging with language.
Yeah.
That's both critical and discerning.
So he's showing his followers how to see through those tricks.
He is.
Yeah.
And reclaim their own agency.
That connects back to Mills's concept of an American public.
He does.
Where people can think critically, question authority, and resist those attempts.
And control their thoughts and actions.
Yeah, through manipulative language.
Through manipulative language.
Makes sense.
It's about reclaiming that ability to reason, to engage in dialogue.
Yeah.
And reach your own conclusions.
Not just accepting whatever they tell you.
Rather than just blindly accepting what's being fed to you.
Now that brings up another attribute of mass society.
Does it?
That Mills talked about.
Okay.
Social atomization.
Oh, yeah.
That feeling of isolation, like you're disconnected.
From everyone.
Yeah, from any real community or a sense of belonging.
Did Jesus address that too?
Yeah, that was a big one for him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
What's that?
He didn't do it.
Okay.
By trying to build massive movements.
Oh, really?
Or create these huge impersonal institutions.
Yeah, it's surprised.
In fact, he actually warned against the dangers of scaling up too quickly.
You'd think if you're fighting isolation, You'd want more people.
You'd want to gather as many people as possible. But Duke argues that Jesus was more focused on the quality of the connection.
Okay.
Rather than the quantity of followers.
I see.
Remember that line where he says,
which one?
For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them.
I always thought of that as like a feel-good statement.
Yeah.
About small groups.
Right.
But there's more to it.
There's a deeper meaning.
Okay.
It's not about the number of people.
Okay.
It's about the depth of engagement, the quality of the interaction.
Okay.
Truth, according to this interpretation, is revealed through those intimate one-on-one encounters.
Okay.
Where real dialogue can happen.
It's not about the size of the boat.
Exactly.
It's the motion in the ocean.
So instead of focusing on building these huge followings, Jesus was more interested in fostering those genuine connections where real transformation could happen.
I see.
He was building a network of relationships.
Right.
Not just an organization.
Yeah. That goes back to Mills's idea.
It does.
Of the American public versus the isolation of mass society.
It's about fostering those authentic human connections that create a sense of belonging.
And shared purpose.
And this brings up a really important question.
Okay.
How do we balance the need for individual empowerment with the challenges of scaling up any kind of movement or initiative?
That's a tough one.
Because if Jesus was wary of getting too big too fast, what does that mean?
For us.
For those of us who are trying to create positive change in the world.
That's a great question.
And it leads us
to
what this essay calls the Judas effect.
Ooh.
A cautionary tale about the inherent vulnerabilities.
Of what?
Of any movement or organization.
As it grows.
As it grows.
I think we need to save that one for the next part.
For the next part of our deep dive.
All right.
The Judas effect is a crucial piece.
I'm intrigued.
It raises important questions.
About what?
About how to maintain integrity, authenticity, and purpose.
As things get bigger.
As we try to scale up those principles of individual empowerment and ethical engagement that we've been talking about.
All right, let's unpack this Judas effect next time.
Well.
And see what lessons we can learn.
All right, so we're back.
Back again.
Ready to tackle this Judas effect.
Yep.
We were saying how Jesus seemed to prefer smaller, more intimate gatherings over building those huge movements.
Right.
So how does that
cautionary tale
play into the challenges of trying to foster an American public in today's world?
Well, the Judas effect, as Duke puts it, is a pretty stark reminder that growth doesn't always equal progress.
Oh, I see.
And it kind of points to that risk, you know,
of what?
Of losing sight of what matters.
Yeah.
As your group.
Your organization. And, of course, the story of Judas betraying Jesus really drives that point home.
One of his closest disciples.
I know.
A powerful metaphor.
It's like that saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Yeah.
But is Duke saying that any attempt to scale up these principles of individual empowerment and ethical engagement
is just doomed to fail?
Is it impossible?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
But he's urging us to be cautious.
Or watch out for the pitfalls.
Yeah. He argues that as movements grow, they often become more vulnerable.
To what?
To infiltration, corruption. Power struggles, you know?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Think about how often we see institutions that start with good intentions.
Yeah, noble intentions.
And they become bureaucratic.
Right, they lose their way.
Impersonal.
More focused on control than service.
Exactly.
It's like a natural law almost.
It really is.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
Right?
Is it even possible to create a world where Mills's vision...
That vision of an American public...
can actually flourish.
Right.
On a larger scale?
That is the million-dollar question.
It is.
And Duke doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
Okay.
But he does bring up this really interesting concept.
What's that?
He calls it worldwide Americanism.
Worldwide Americanism.
Yeah. Okay, as a possible antidote
I'm intrigued
to the negative side of globalization.
Okay, but worldwide Americanism.
It sounds kind of contradictory, right?
It does. Yeah, can you explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. Keep in mind, Duke isn't using Americanism in like a patriotic sense.
Right.
He's drawing on Mill's concept of an American public as this universal ideal, a society where everyone is active and engaged, empowered to shape their reality.
So it's not about
Not about pushing a specific ideology or cultural agenda.
It's about those core principles.
Exactly.
Of an informed, critically thinking, ethically engaged public.
And Duke argues that this worldwide Americanism is the only real alternative to the top-down control and manipulation.
The things we were talking about earlier.
That define what he calls globalism.
Okay, I'm starting to see the distinction there.
Yeah.
So how do we actually cultivate...
Right. How do we actually do it?
This worldwide Americanism without falling into that Judas effect trap?
Right.
Where do we even start?
Duke's answer, and this is a tough one, is that it starts with us.
With each of us?
Yeah, taking personal responsibility for living out those principles of Logos.
In our own lives?
In our everyday interactions.
So it's not about...
It's not about waiting for a movement or some big political thing.
It's about starting small.
Yeah, those one-on-one conversations
where
we can model critical thinking and ethical clarity.
Yeah, makes sense.
Genuine dialogue.
So it's less of a political or social problem and more of a personal challenge.
Yeah.
It's about how we engage with information.
Right.
How we participate in conversations.
How we build relationship.
How we show up in the world.
Exactly.
So if Logos is the antidote to mass society, like Duke says, where do we start applying it?
In our own lives.
What can our listeners actually do?
Great question. I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
Becoming aware of how we're being influenced.
Right. Manipulated, controlled.
By those forces of mass society.
Yeah. Are we just passively consuming information?
Without thinking?
Are we accepting those thought-terminating cliches?
Without challenging them?
Are we letting ourselves feel isolated?
Disconnected.
From everyone around us?
Exactly.
It's about taking a step back.
And asking ourselves.
Yeah. Am I living in a way that reflects those principles of an American public?
That engaged, empowered, ethically responsible society.
That Mills talked about.
Yeah, or am I slipping into those old patterns?
The patterns of passivity, isolation, uncritical acceptance.
That define mass society.
Exactly.
Once we've done that.
That self-reflection. We can start making different choices.
Right.
Choices that embody those principles of Logos.
Yeah, in our everyday lives.
Engaging in more thoughtful conversations.
Right.
Challenging manipulative rhetoric.
Seeking out genuine connection.
Becoming more active in shaping our reality.
Exactly.
So this has been a really thought-provoking deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding
of
how these ancient principles of Logos can apply to the challenges we face today.
Me too. And Duke's essay leaves us with a really powerful question.
What's that?
If Logos is the key to restoring an American public and pushing back against mass society,
where do we start?
Where can you start applying it?
In your own life.
What small interactions can you engage in?
To promote truth, reason, active participation.
It's a great question to think about.
It is, and I hope our listeners will take it to heart.
Yeah.
And start putting these principles into practice.
Because real change starts with us.
It does not with grand schemes or political movements. But with those courageous choices.
The choices we make every day.
Exactly. This has been fantastic.
It has.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And for exploring the power of Logos.
This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world.